Hey y'all, welcome to Parent Empowerment with Mandy Drogin. I'm Mandy. I'm just a mom sitting down having real conversations with real Texas parents about what's going on in our schools. Today, I'm so excited to be joined by Rabbi Garfield, who oversees the largest Jewish Orthodox day school in the state of Texas, as well as Ari Weisenfeld from Agudath, Israel. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me.
Great to be here.
Thank you for having us.
I'm just so excited to dive into kind of what's going on in your community, in the Jewish community, in your schools, because a lot of people don't realize this. Oftentimes it's said that school choice is only for Catholic schools or Protestant schools, but people don't realize that the Jewish community is a full-fledged partner in the Parent Empowerment Coalition, and we've been working together for years to advocate for empowering parents, particularly those in the Jewish community. Ari, talk to me a little bit about what Agudath Israel does to support education and school choice within your community here in Texas.
Okay, for sure. So Agudath Israel of America is a century-old organization, more than a century old, that advocates and on behalf of Orthodox Jewish communities across the country. Of course, we're primarily based in the Northeast, so that's starting to change, as Rabbi Garfield can talk firsthand about the growth of our communities in Texas and elsewhere. But so we'll advocate in front of local, state, federal lawmakers, as well as we provide social services, so kind of an umbrella organization servicing the unique needs of the Orthodox Jewish community. But we've actually been involved in the school choice effort for a lot longer than just a few years. And right now, as we're recording this, federal school choice is a big issue. Whether it will happen or won't, we'll probably wait about 100 days and see. But regardless of, the state efforts. But at the federal level, we've been involved going back to the 1960s. The head of Agudath Israel was a man by the name of Moshe Sher, and he was the president of an organization called Credit, which stood for Citizens Relief for Education Through Income Tax. He ran that organization alongside a name you might recognize, Ivan Zylstra, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, who I believe was a government relations director of the National Union of Christian Schools. And Ivan was also on President Carter and President Nixon's non-public school advisory boards. So definitely a man who was bipartisan, kind of floated in all worlds. So the two of them ran this coalition, and they advocated in front of Congress way back in the 1960s for an income tax, credit for parents based off the tuition they spent. And to give you a little, Garfield, you're going to love this, how much the times have changed. Mandy, if I asked you right now, how much do you think tuition was in 1960 for a private Catholic school?
I don't know, $500 maybe?
Wow. So the income tax, they were spot on.
Oh.
They were advocating for a $200 income tax credit because that was roughly half of what average tuition was. Wow. So you think now the numbers have changed over the last 50, 60 years. But that ended up, there's some Supreme Court decisions in the 70s that kind of brought the hammer down on that. And the effort, kind of changed to initially, as you know very well, with tax credit scholarships, then morphed into ESAs. And here we are today. So at the federal level, Agudath Israel has been there for decades. In Texas, we've been there since the beginning, since 2007. There was a rally in Austin with 5,000 people. Agudath Israel was one of the co-sponsors. Rabbi Feigenbaum, who is a phenomenal rabbi based out of Dallas, he was one of the speakers at that rally in 2007. And then obviously over the years, by each effort in 2017, Rabbi Katz, who was, I believe, at the time the head of the school, the Torat Day School of Dallas, gave the benediction at the rally in 2017. And as you know, in this latest push in 2021, a couple of years ago, our community was there again. We were a big part of that rally, thanks to the help of people like Rabbi Garfield, who brought and really encouraged the community to come. So we've been involved not just at the federal level, but also not just at the state level across the country, but specifically in Texas. The Orthodox Jewish community in Texas has been represented by us in Austin over, now coming up on almost 2 decades. And hopefully this will be the last time. I very much want to come to Texas to enjoy the weather and the beautiful community, but maybe this will be the last time that I have to fly in, to help bring the community to a rally. And this will be the time that we actually get over that legislative hump to passing a comprehensive school choice bill into law. But that's a little bit of our history and who we are and our history in Texas. And, I sincerely hope that with the passing of a comprehensive school choice program in Texas, that will be the impetus to create a full-time Agudath Israel office in Texas. So, they'll have real on-the-ground representation every 2 years as the legislature gets back to session. But so that's a little bit about us and our previous involvement, and we look forward to being there again.
Wonderful. We are so grateful to have your voice and the voices of all the parents and the kids that you help speak for and that you help bring to Austin to really share the message from the Jewish community. So I do remember, it wasn't that long ago when we all stood out in the rain with Governor Abbott and several other leaders as we were talking about the importance of empowering parents and passing education savings accounts. So, stick with us. Keep coming. We'll get there. Which takes me to Rabbi Garfield. You run the largest Jewish school in Texas. So I want to hear a little bit first about your background as an adjunct professor at Johns Hopkins University and what you saw there, and then about your experience right now with the families and why passing education savings account is so important for those families that are attending your school or that really want to attend your school.
Okay, wonderful. It's great to be here and meet you again, Mandy, and of course the rabbi. Great to hear that history as it goes way back.
Yeah.
So I've been involved in Jewish education for about 25 years now. I've taught all grades, all ages, all environments, and really I believe in education so much that I keep going back to school myself and learning more and more. You mentioned Johns Hopkins. So I was very fortunate. I got to teach at Hopkins over a 10-year period in their School of Education as an adjunct. And in that, I got to really look at how are we preparing teachers and what are we doing broadly for the future of education. Now, Hopkins is in the top 5 schools in education. They're very involved in the Baltimore scene of education, which is where they're based. But the thought leaders there are really looking broadly and really thinking about what is a good education and what are the pieces. And so I think that when we talk about school choice, one of the things that we think about here in our school is, what is the goal? What are we all trying to accomplish, in our schools, whether they be public schools? I actually went to University of Houston for my doctorate. So I really understood. I was with 25 colleagues, all of whom were in the public school system. So I really got a good dose of the challenges and sort of the state of affairs, if you will, in the Houston, it's broader than Houston, in the greater Texas public school systems, districts, because most of the people in that program were studying to become superintendents of Texas. And so they really gave us a full understanding of the broad picture. So anyway, what is our goal and are we accomplishing it? And how is our money best spent? I mean, that's the bottom line. And when it comes to the educational product, I could tell you with absolute confidence that the private schools like ours, are efficiently meeting those goals in a way that really ultimately saves the greater community money and really is a great investment in the future of our communities, because we are doing a wonderful job of values-based education. And we all know that the world we live in is really struggling on all sides. This is not a right-wing issue. This is a broad issue. How do we make sure that the students of today are given the values not to commit mass crime, right? Not to be destructive, to be healthy members of society. This is something we all want. I don't care where you are on the political spectrum. And so, schools like ours are really committed to marrying the values, and these are American values. These are good American Judeo-Christian values. These are not some kind of arcane values. These are values that will produce the society we all want to live in, of low crime and healthy families and all the good things. So that's what our school is focused on and doing successfully. But there is a real financial challenge. The cost of education is going higher and higher. Our communities are paying their fair share of taxes all along. And, one of the biggest struggles that we have is making sure we're meeting the needs of all the individual students who want the values that we offer and need that and see that as a core value of theirs, that we have to meet that need. But yet, financially, it's become a real challenge.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing that about the operations of your school and the success and the parents that are seeking it out. And I think it is really important to note when I'm asked about why I support school choice, it's not just that we see increased academic achievement. That's, of course, a huge part of an educational experience, but it's also that value-based education. And I like when you talk about that and the fact that it's the Judeo-Christian values that really are the foundation of what made America great, what made us so successful, what made us the most benevolent and prosperous nation on the face of the earth. And that was those Judeo-Christian values that our founders brought forth and set up our system based on. So I love to hear that you guys are teaching that within your school. So let's talk a little bit about, you mentioned the strain that your families oftentimes feel, those in the Jewish community that seek out your school. Can you share with us a little bit about, well, first off, about your tuition? Can you share with us,
Sure.
What are your families spending on tuition?
So our tuition varies slightly based on age, but you're looking at about $13,000 a year on average as the full sticker price. And the truth is, that's what it costs us. It costs us that much. But our income per student, which means the average amount that parents are paying, is more than half of that.
Yeah.
I mean, less than half of that, I should say, like under six.
Yeah.
6.5. So, which means that we have to raise that difference.
Yeah.
It's a huge differential.
I think I love to talk about that because there's this misnomer out there that private schools cost $25,000, $30,000 a year. And I think it's very important. I mean, you all are located in Houston, where it's expensive. It's a city, and we understand that. And when we look at how much Houston is spending, how much HISD is spending, it's over about $20,000 per kid when you factor everything in.
Wow.
So it really is remarkable that you all are able to provide a high quality values-based education for the $13,000. And when we look across Texas, according to the TEA, the expenditures for the 2022-2023 school year were $16,792 per kid across the state of Texas. So it's pretty amazing what you all are able to do. But as you said, I imagine that a lot of your families have multiple children. Is that correct?
Yeah. They average about 3 in our school. That's just in our school is about 3.2.
Yeah. That's I get asked that a lot because while if you have one, maybe even 2 children, the burden is oftentimes manageable, even though painful, but manageable for so many families. When we're talking about families with multiple children that want all of their children in a school that aligns with their values, that is faith-based, it can be out of reach or quite a struggle for those with multiple children. Do y'all face that in your school as well, seeing those struggles that families or the sacrifices that families have to make?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but the average income per family in Texas, what is it, 100,000 maybe? You know, I don't even know, probably less than that. The total income as a family unit. Right. And so if tuition costs $13,000 a kid, you know, after taxes, you probably have 80,000. So that no one could afford half their salary in education fees. It's a non-starter. And so it puts a lot of pressure on the community, either the individuals or the school or whoever, to really bridge that gap.
And I can talk about my experience across the country and the schools and communities I deal with, you know, in my role in Agudath Israel. And the same thing, I believe, and Rabbi Garfield can correct me if I'm wrong, holds true for, you know, Torat in Houston. Our schools view themselves as a vehicle of the community, in where every child, if you're a member of the community, you're accepted, regardless of your ability to pay. And not only that, if you're in the school and God forbid there's a financial crisis, a health crisis, and parents lose their ability to pay tuition, that child's not being thrown out in the street. So it's not even just that, tuition is $13,000 and, like Garfield mentioned, the average actual tuition per child that the school's receiving might be closer to $6,000. You know, the school knows that going in. They're not trying to, hardball anybody and say, if you can't pay 12.5, don't even bother applying. No. If you're a member of our community, you are in, so, and that is true in the Orthodox Jewish day schools almost unanimously across the country. And they will take care of that child. And like I said, they view it as, the school has to go above and beyond to fundraise to meet that obligation. I know many, many schools who have told me, because, we deal with the numbers and talking to lawmakers and, telling them that if this school hypothetically were to receive 100% full tuition from every child, they still would have to fundraise, because many of the schools make the strategic move of saying, hey, we're actually going to call full tuition less than what our operating expenses divided by the amount of children we have, because that way it's at least attainable So 13,000 might be for a family. Okay, I could stretch to make that, or to pay as much as I can of that. So, but if they were to call full tuition, what it really is, maybe it's 17,000. A lot of parents would give up and say, "Well, I can't pay anything close to that, so I'm just going to pay 5 or 4 and whatever. I'm not even going to, So a lot of schools are actually what they call full tuition. When the parents apply, is not really their full tuition. It's kind of trying to balance between encouraging the parents to stretch a little bit and make that sacrifice. And our parents sacrifice tremendously to provide this education. I know my dad is a lawyer, my mom's a teacher, and maybe on paper we should have been a wonderful middle-class family, and we were. I never felt like I was missing anything growing up. I had phenomenal parents, and if they're watching this, amazing, love you so much. But certainly I know firsthand that it was a tremendous sacrifice, but it wasn't one done, unwillingly and with complaining and with, oh my gosh, I can't believe perhaps TPPF might be presenting to the legislature about property taxes. This is an unfair, theft. It's no, I am glad. This is an investment. Parents view it as an investment in their children. I am happy. I have 3 children who are in a yeshiva day school system. I am happy to make those payments because I know the long-term return on investment, I believe, is the best possible, that my children will graduate that system, and whatever they go on to do in life, whatever career they go into, families, etc., that they will be the best. I have given them the best possible start in life and the best possible tools to navigate life by putting them through a Orthodox Jewish yeshiva day school system. That's how important those values are to me. And I gladly, my wife and I do the same thing, where our lives could look a lot different if we didn't have kids and sent them to another school. But no, this is something that we're happy to do. And again, across the country in our community, it is a tremendous sacrifice. It's difficult. And as to your point before about how much the state spends per child is also true. And I can tell you from my experience across the country, almost unanimously across the country, where our communities are, and very often they're located either in or next to major cities, the state is spending double or even more per child on the educational costs than what our schools are charging. And our schools are providing a dual curriculum, and they're hiring double the amount of teachers, because it's not just that you have math, science, reading, etc. And a gym teacher, you're also hiring teachers that are providing the Jewish education. So many of them are literally have a dual curriculum with double the amount of staff. So it is as you mentioned, it's when we look at this and we're advocating for school choice, we don't view it as, it's a handout. The state should be subsidizing our education. To us, we're providing the state with a tremendous value. We save the state hundreds of millions of dollars by not utilizing their system. And we're able to provide what we think is a quality education on all fronts for less than half the price. So the state should view it as an investment and not an expenditure.
I love hearing about what is going on in the communities across the country. Rabbi, we talked about this about a year and a half ago. You, along with over 100 parents from your area, I think it was about 200 people that y'all came in to participate at the rally with the governor and others across the state. What were your parents saying? Talk to me a little bit about what the parents who are sacrificing, or the grandparents that are sacrificing for children to go to your school, to have the education that you're providing. Why are they so supportive of the parent empowerment movement and our push to pass education savings accounts? What do they tell you?
Well, outside of a mortgage, really, tuition is the second biggest expenditure that they deal with. Mm-hmm. And it's a tremendous strain on them. And since there are so many states that already have some kind of voucher system, and their cousins and uncles and whoever siblings live in these places where, you can get thousands and thousands of dollars that they're paying in taxes, and through property tax, etc. So there's this real sense of it's time. And it's really been an interesting thing. A lot of these people are not from Texas. They've moved here for opportunity. Mm-hmm. In a way, they're bringing so much economic vitality to the state, from outside. But they say, how could Texas, that's known as being more right-wing oriented, and Texas being always in the front of some of these issues, be so far behind? It's like shocking to our parents when they move here. Yeah. And so when the opportunity came up to express our voice, it was an easy sell. We partnered with Agudath to get some buses, and we loaded them up, and people took off from work, and they came because they felt like the time has come. Enough is enough. Texas should no longer be lagging behind so much than these other states It's just not. It's not within the Texas ethos.
Right. We're all about freedom, and that includes freedom of religion and freedom of every parent to select the best education. Amen.
Rabbi Garfield makes a very interesting point because he said something that's fascinating, which we brought up when after that rally, my organization, we took a whole bunch of parents and a couple of the school leaders, and we went through the Capitol, and we met with, over 20 lawmakers, but important ones that were on the fence at the time, very targeted, whose doors we knocked on and walked into. And we had this conversation with them. And one of the things we told them, as I mentioned before earlier in our conversation, our community in the Northeast is fleeing the Northeast. Our community, which traditionally has been centered around New York City and Brooklyn more specifically, is moving out in droves. And where are they going? Many of them are looking at the map. It's a new economy we live in. It's a new world where people can work almost anywhere. And many of our community, which is very entrepreneurial, and a lot of them own jobs or are very highly skilled workers. And they're saying to themselves, well, I could be a software engineer in New York with that, everything that comes with that. Or I can move to Florida and get an ESA for my kids. Or I could take my skills, or I could take my company and go somewhere else, which is a better, perhaps, political environment that they like better, more aligns with their values, or just economically to a market that they feel, their business or that their skills can thrive in. Mm-hmm. And many of them are looking at Florida or Texas or Tennessee or those types of states and going, well, hold on a second, which one of these states actually provides, school choice? Which one of them puts parents first? And that's where I'm going to bring my skills to, and that's where I'm going to bring my business to, because, maybe I'm a business owner and I don't really care so much, but my employees care tremendously. So as soon as they find out I'm moving the company, they start lobbying for Florida. So we made that point to lawmakers, you have an opportunity now to, I wouldn't even say get ahead, level the playing field with Florida, because they're almost there already with, real universal school choice, but also, Arizona and other states like that where, there's a competition for highly skilled workers, and the parents are smart. They know what the policies are in different states, and they want to move to a state that they can maximize the value.
Absolutely. I think that's a great point when we talk about what's important to right now for the families that would like to utilize education savings accounts. But really, the department that I oversee is Next Generation Texas. And we are we are raising and educating the next generation of leaders, of workers, of families here in our schools. And when you have 50% of kids that read on grade level and 60% that can't do math on grade level, you really start to realize there's a crisis that needs to be addressed by incentivizing schools and providing options. So let's talk a little bit about what you all talk about across the country, not just for families that are maybe looking to leave some of these really high tax states or bad weather states or whatever it is for economic opportunity. The states that have passed school choice, so there's over 30 states that have some form of school choice, 12 that have universal education savings accounts. What is your community saying and doing, the schools that are there in those states? Are they able to grow? Are there more families that are coming to the schools? And then that's for you, Ari, but then I'll go to Rabbi Garfield and say, what are you hoping to see and the opportunities to provide here in Texas?
A great question. And they absolutely are. As I mentioned, as families that really are, in our community in particular, kind of leaving the Northeast, they are looking elsewhere and seeing, what's available. And I know, for example, last year in Arizona, there was a push from the governor's office to try and roll back some of the school choice programs they have there. And we had a big rally at the Capitol, and our community showed up there too. They are ready to defend what they've come to embrace and what helps them afford a quality Jewish education. So they were right there at the Capitol, and we put out our action alert and got, hundreds and thousands of emails flooding out to lawmakers. The parents are ready to push back and fight for what they see is working for them. And even in the states where we don't yet have school choice or don't yet have, comprehensive programs, our parents are pushing and asking for more. Tennessee, there's a pilot program right now, and the state is hopefully this year going to try and push for something larger. The governor's been talking about it. Our parents last year, also between action alerts and reaching out to the lawmakers' offices, they are right there. They want more. They see that, as Garfield mentioned, they're looking at their friends and cousins living in neighboring states and going, well, why can't we have this? Looking at the people in Georgia and Florida and Arizona and saying, well, it's working well there. Why can't? And even in the states where it's not, you might not think it's going to happen right now. based off the current political climate, the parents are still pushing for it. In New Jersey, which has a tremendous, Orthodox Jewish community, there's a real push. Parents are asking for it. And last year, there was a bill that was introduced and had the a Democrat, I believe, the chair of the Education and chair of the Finance Committee both sponsor the bill. So I think we're starting to see also that this is becoming less of a partisan issue, and more people are starting to look at it and go, well, actually, this makes sense. This is good policy, and I'm willing to put my name behind it, regardless of what initial comes after my name in terms of political party, because parents are demanding it and screaming for it. So obviously, in the country at large, we're seeing that, and you see with your polling that you guys put out, and across the country, really, all the different organizations that put out polling in their unique states, it's the same thing. Parents, regardless of political party, regardless of income level and class or any, they're screaming, demanding for more choice, more educational options, and our community is no exception to that.
Absolutely. Yeah. The love that we have for our children, that transcends everything, right? It transcends race, socioeconomics, religion, street you live on. Parents are definitely locking arms across all different sectors and religions and saying, we really are demanding to be in charge of our child's education. So, Rabbi Garfield, when education savings accounts pass, what do you hope to see? How is this going to impact your school and the families that attend your school or that would like to?
Two things come to mind. Number one is not so direct, but quite significant, which is the stress on families. One of the most significant indicators for children to be successful in school is coming to school with the sense of calm and coming from homes that are calm. And right now, the stress, the financial stress that's been put on our parent body to make tuition is just remarkable and comes at a cost in terms of their home living. And, as Rabbi Weisenfeld said, and I could say myself, we have children in the system. We know the tremendous expense that we're enduring. And the thought of that being relieved, I think, will give our parents the extra help they need at home or extra tutoring or whatever they need, a car that works, whatever they're struggling with will provide very significant relief. In terms of in-school, one of the things that we are always struggling to get to are the students who need extra resources and support. The state of Texas, another area that we're not discussing, but it is lagging significantly in the funding that it gives to private schools to provide special services. And what's so, I guess, frustrating about that is that we know what an abysmal job the public school, certainly the Houston Public School, is doing with their students with special needs, that population, and at the great cost. When you talk about cost for a child, when you talk about kids with IEPs, the cost per child in Houston public school is off the charts. I don't even know what the number is, but it's probably double what you mentioned, closer to $30,000 to $40,000. So, and they're doing such a poor job, so much so that TEA has taken over HISD, and part of it has been how they take care of their students with special needs. So I think having that extra funding would really enable us to do even more and be more effective with the kids who need that extra support, whether it be academic or emotional.
So that's a great point, and that is something that community, the special needs parents, are really huge supporters of education savings accounts and really pushing back against a lot of those in the system, even groups like Disabilities Rights Texas and those that want to lock them into the public schools that in theory are giving them money, but that their children are not being served. Do you at your school are you able to educate children with special needs?
Yes and no. I mean, we try our best.
Yep.
As we've talked about, the culture of our school is so important to our parent body that they're really willing to partner with us as much as they can financially so that their children could stay here. But in the end of the day, there are children that are beyond our capacity and they have to go on to other schools. Happen to be our local public school is really poor. I think it got like a D or an F in the the way they grade it. So they really don't do that unless they really have to. But so we do our best. To get back to your question, we do our best to keep them here, but it's a real strain, and it's a financial strain on the parents, which we share the burden with because we don't get any money from the government on that. Right. No federal money or state money to help.
Yeah,
Very
well,
little.
I thank you for sharing that. I hear that quite a bit. So there's this myth out there that private schools won't educate children with special needs, and of course there are some children that need really, really, really comprehensive IEP accommodations for those special needs. But a lot of kids from the private schools that I talk to that are a part of this movement as well, they want to accept kids with IEPs. They want to accept the kids with autism or dyslexia, those manageable special needs where that
Right.
if you can have a teacher or a couple of teachers that specialize in that. So it's really false for opponents of empowering parents to say they don't want children with special needs, where I know particularly those faith-based schools that couldn't be further from the truth. It's just
Yeah,
a
and what
matter
they're
of
doing in the public
resources.
school is so laughable.
Yeah.
And if someone would look at it with a discerning eye from an educator's perspective and look at even what we're doing now without the funding is probably better than what they're doing with 3 times the funding in the public school because of all the red tape and all the laws and all the dysfunction. That's part of the whole idea of privatization is that the efficiencies go up. And so a school like ours is extremely efficient as it's compared to the public school system with our use of funds.
Yeah.
Responsibility is there. You answer directly to a parent who can pull their child at any minute.
Right.
But the one thing I would mention also coming from a national perspective is again, I can reiterate, our schools across the country want to service these children. And it's not just because, like a source of pride or, we could take in any child. We're such a great school. We can handle anything. It's also what's best for the child in many cases. You have a sense of community in the school. You have a faith-based school who is, educating that child's other siblings. And every morning, the brothers and sisters go to one school, and then that child wakes up and gets sent to a completely different school. It makes them feel like an outsider. It makes them feel ostracized. It makes them feel, as if they're not part of the community. So that mainstreaming, if it can be done, in a way that does give the child what they need educationally, is often what's best for that child emotionally and psychologically, to be playing in the same recess yard as their brothers and sisters and to have the same friends and the same experiences. So it's not just, a numbers game or purely educational. It's holistically looking at what's best for this child. And very often the answer is this child should be with the siblings if they can. And obviously, of course, there are extreme scenarios where a school says, well, just, we need real specialization. It's not what's best for the child in this particular scenario. But the idea that our schools wouldn't accept special needs children is ridiculous because currently, as we mentioned before, at a tremendous loss to the schools financially, they're already doing it. And they're doing as best they can. And I can speak firsthand experience with schools I know that, it is a tremendous financial, but they don't, they do their best to say whatever we can do, we will do, even if we have to fundraise outside of tuition, even if we have to fundraise even outside of our normal operating expenses.
Correct.
It's a whole separate fundraiser. Some of them view it as like a separate school within the school. So it's something that our schools have done, are currently doing without the help, and they will continue to do, if they're able to get any help. The other thing I want to mention on what Rabbi Garfield said is as a general, feeling of the community, we are very pro public school. We want a robust educational system for everyone. As a minority group that's, visible on the streets, walking down the streets, I wear a yarmulke. My 7-year-old son wears a yarmulke. My daughter in the summer is wearing a skirt and she's dressed modestly. Somebody who doesn't like us for whatever reason can pick us out of a crowd, and they have a tendency to do so. So we are a visible target walking down the street, and it's very unfortunate, but it's the reality we live in. But there is a correlation sometimes between a person's experience, and if they've been set up for success in life through, kindergarten through 12th grade, and their reaction, towards us. So we very much want everyone should be as educated as possible, should be set up for success in life. Nothing would make us happier, as a community. We want our local public schools to do great. It's not this sense of like, shut down the whole system and rip everything to shreds because it's not working. If it can work, great. But as as an educator, and we know as parents, one size does not fit all. We need options for different children. We also need accountability. There is no accountability in the current system. If you don't lose anything when a child leaves your system, you don't lose funding, you don't lose a job, you don't, so, and there are many people who much better than myself can speak for that firsthand of how principals have told them or superintendents have told their moms, give us, 5 to 10 years, we'll have the school turned around. And, like, okay, and then the mom responds, in 5 to 10 years, my son's going to be in a body bag if this continues on this trajectory, right? So, it's coming from a place of, yes, obviously we have our system. We're very proud of our system. It's been developed and refined and has been, really evolving over the last almost 100 years, in when our community really came over from mostly Europe and the Middle East to the United States for a land of opportunity, and saw the need to create their own schooling and to transmit their values through the school system. But it's not, to us, it's not this sense of, this is the one and only way to do it. If public school can be the best place for your child, amazing. If an ESA and homeschooling is the best place for your child, amazing. If it's a micro school, even better. Whatever's best, as long as a society our kids are flourishing, we're happy. We're happy selfishly that we're not concerned that person's going to blame their problems in life on us. And we're happy because that's best for society as a whole when every child can flourish in the right setting.
Thank you. I mean, I can't say it any better than that. That's exactly correct. The parent empowerment movement and pushing for education savings accounts here in Texas is not in any way to harm the public school system. If your public school works for you, that's wonderful. We want parents to feel ownership of their schools and to support their children, while also recognizing that one size fits all does not work for every family, and that particularly communities, just because you live on a certain street, maybe you are a part of the Jewish community or Catholic faith or whatever it is, and want to seek out that type of education for your child. So thank you for touching on that. You also opened the door to a much more sensitive topic that I think that maybe Rabbi Garfield might be able to touch on with your experience in higher ed. But lately, in the past several years, we have seen this just abhorrent rise in anti-Semitism. And we're seeing it in our colleges of higher education, obviously. We're also seeing it in our public schools, our K through 12 system. And I imagine that does take a toll on the kids. You talked a little bit about your daughter, who it's easy to identify, or your son, it's easy to identify simply based on their dress, that they are of the Jewish faith. Can you talk to us a little bit about what you saw maybe when you were an adjunct professor, and the changes that have occurred in higher ed and that really need to occur to ensure that this divisiveness that we're seeing, not just the anti-Semitism, but all of this racial identity politics and divisiveness, where kids, it appears, are just being conditioned to distrust or dislike anyone that is either not like them or of a different race, quite frankly. I mean, we've got privilege walks going on and all these other things. Talk to us about your experience in higher ed, and then also the impact on our students in the K through 12 system.
So I was blessed that I didn't have a lot of personal experiences with any type of anti-Semitism when I was at Hopkins. I also was there as a student and a professor, so I was there for quite many years. And also at University of Houston, I found people to be very receptive. And in Texas in general, as compared to other places I've lived, we're really blessed with a community that respects religion broadly and recognizes the value of diversity. But broader than that, as an observer of American education system and someone who does send students to the universities and have my own children exploring universities, I could say that it's an extremely scary time to be a young adult who has to go into these places, who knows that they're going to be scorned and potentially they could be subject to attack. And it's a commonplace in the modern landscape of higher ed. It's standard. And it's very concerning. It really is. And as Orthodox Jews, or really anyone who has discerning identification, it's something that we're trying to grapple with as a community. Some people argue that we should separate, that we should go to the schools that will embrace us, that are either Jewish or Jewish, culturally connected, and leave it. And other people argue that no, we need to stand there and stand strong and let our voice heard. And, it's a hard call for us. And as you know, the Jewish community has been through a lot of suffering in our history at the hands of others who want to see us negatively. There was just a major incident that happened at the Independence School conference, their inclusion conference, where the speakers got up and talked down about Israel and Jews and people in the crowd. There was quite a lot of Jewish educators there. I wasn't personally there, but there were quite a lot of Jewish educators, and they said they felt unsafe They felt targeted. And there was this whole fallout afterwards through national Jewish educators organizations about how to deal with it. How do we respond? And I went on to the call myself because I wanted to hear, the different thoughts. And the educational leaders were struggling with this. Do we leave that organization en masse? This is the largest private school organization in America. All the important private schools coalesce through this organization. And so do we leave the organization en masse? It's the National Association of Independent Schools, NAIS. Or do we stay and try to voice our values, even though there's such a strong counterculture? And so it's a scary time. And I know that the state of Texas and great Texan civilians or whatever, citizens, value diversity and value religion. And I hope that this comes an opportunity for them to express that and express their appreciation for that diversity by funding different education opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm right there with you. I'm so sorry that experience is going on, and as a Christian sitting here watching just the abhorrent treatment of those of the Jewish faith, it's pretty frustrating to watch. And I do think that while you said you have to be able to stand up for your community, that it is important that those of the Jewish faith that want to seek out a faith-based education, that those parents have that opportunity. Because the truth is there are lots of kids that are experiencing this unfortunately all across the country. So thank you for talking about that, because while not necessarily directly tied specifically to ESAs, it is important that we say this does happen, and that regardless of if a child is being bullied due to their faith or something else or whatever aspect it is, a parent should ultimately have that right to put them in the best learning environment, the safest learning environment for them. So thanks for talking
100%.
about that very, very difficult issue.
And we are seeing parents who are pulling, because of anti-Semitism, are pulling their children from their public school that they were otherwise previously happy with in terms of the education provided. And they're saying this is no longer an environment I can have my children in, and exploring whether it's a faith-based school or just homeschooling or a charter school or whatever it might be, just other options. It has pushed parents out of the traditional system, which I know firsthand, and it has been an interesting ripple effect of that. And hopefully with Texas embracing school choice, it will give any parent who is facing a dilemma like this the resources needed to put the child in the best situation.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys for joining us today. Before we wrap up, I want to ask each of you individually, why Agudath Israel it believes that empowering the Texas parents all across our state with education savings accounts, with education freedom, why that will improve the lives of kids, particularly those in the Jewish community. And then, Rabbi Garfield, I will kick that over to you, why it's so important for your families that are Texans to have access to ESAs.
So it's an excellent question. And, for us, it really comes down to putting children first. If a policy puts children and students first, it's a policy that we can get behind. And I've had times where I've had reporters who have been a little aggressive in asking me, but, won't the result of that be this or be that? And I said, here's what I care about. What puts students first? What puts children first? And if your policy is going to put kids first, I can get behind it. And that's what we should be thinking about. And that's, as a community, the Jewish community, and specifically the Orthodox Jewish community, every decision we make centers around their children, where we live, with the kind of jobs we try to get into, the careers we go into. We're thinking about what's going to be, how much time can I spend at home with my kid? As I mentioned before, my dad's a lawyer. He became a lawyer and works, he chose a job with the state government as a lawyer for the state of New York, specifically so he could have the vacation time to take off to attend our school functions and to take off for holidays and to be able to spend more time with us. And as a kid, sometimes that boggled my mind. I was like, but I knew even as a young kid, hey, if you go into private practice, you might make more money. So yeah, but if I went to private practice, I couldn't be there for your school play. So, those type of decisions our parents are making, our community makes, it's all about the kids. What's best for their kids? And for us, that has been our history, going back, 2,000 years of putting children first, and it will continue to be. And I think that, if Texas joins the ever-growing list of states that puts children first, they will reap the rewards, for decades to come, centuries to come. It'll be the best thing they ever do.
Thank you. All right, Rabbi. Why is it important for the legislature to pass education savings accounts, and why does the Jewish community, particularly those families at your school or that would like to attend your school, why is it so important to them?
Well, from the founding of our country, there was an understanding that compulsory education is an important value and an important component of the success of the United States of America. America is based on the knowledge that children who are educated ultimately will lead us to a brighter future. The bottom line is that vouchers will enable schools like ours to provide a strong, value-rich education and basis for the children. And the thousands of children who are going to get a great education as a result of those vouchers is reason enough for the state legislature to say, let's invest in the future. We know this is a product that works. We know that the results are strong. And, we want to continue in this great legacy of the founding fathers, even to say that education is the cornerstone of our future. And, there's no reason that it can't be done both in the private schools and in the public schools, but wherever we can invest, we should.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, so much for talking about your experience in education, the families that you are serving, the children that you are serving. Thank you all for being a part of this parent empowerment movement to pass education savings accounts in the state of Texas. And thank you to all our viewers for joining us on Parent Empowerment with Mandy Drogin. Now you have the power.